Chris, it feels like I haven't spoken to you in a long time, and it's only been a week.
It's true. It's true. I would say, let's say busy weeks can do that. Sometimes empty weeks can do that too, though.
You know what? You're right. I think I know part of the reason why it feels like I haven't spoken to you in a long time is because I texted you a couple of times this week and I didn't get a response.
Oh,
But now having had our on ramp, I know how busy you were and what you were up to, so I get it. But it was just one of those things where I think I hit in my world, from my perspective, I hit you twice. I
yeah.
think with some pretty heavy duty. I don't know what you want to call them, memes. Maybe it's the wrong word, but I hit you twice with some like to me heavy stuff to reflect on, and I just never heard back from you. So
Yeah.
it just felt like I wonder. I haven't spoken to Chris. It was one of those things, but it's all good.
Yeah, it's funny that I just you got me thinking about our, or let's say our text friendship. And it is affirmation heavy. And it's very different than some of my other friends. I find like you when you post those things out or I send something back, um like I love getting them. I love the sort of the context and the reflective piece, and I mean the theme. I think we tend to flow around that theme of kind of self-improvement, self-reflection, qualities of a leader, and it's a little bit like a side hustle for developing, I'd say, both professional and personal self. I really dig it. But you got me thinking now, like yeah, I realize now, I even just a thumbs up that it was received. I didn't even get to that. So on the on ramp, I gave a bunch of details. Part of it's funny. So yeah, I don't care. I'll say it. So part of it. So the household was dealing with lice this week. And it's beyond the story of that. Anyone that's gone through it has to deal with, there's a little bit of walk of shame element to it. There's a little bit of just science. And then there's a little bit of, I guess, engineering. You just got to do the work to clean them up. I think I told you it's kind of like having mosquitoes in your hair that never fly away. You just got to go bit by bit, pull everything out. So yeah. Anyways, so there's a lot of the week that was taken up dealing with that, but it did bring to mind. Here's where lice reminded me of you, because I was. Yeah, no, not the beard. It's not the beard. I know, and it's funny because I didn't have to have my beard checked, but you would have to have your beard completely combed out, which I'm sure, I don't, anyone that's seen any of the videos, I have no doubt that if you were to comb out your beard, you would get another sort of like at least inch and a half of luxurious flowy length out of it. Like you throw a relaxer in that sucker and you're going full wizard style. Like it actually would sort of be, kind of swooshy in the wind. But it's that aside, here's what it made me think of. As I'm taking the phone call from my son's school. Yeah, Mr. Clough, you're gonna have to come and get your son. There's active. He's got lice. It right away, I'm like, man, that's a phone call I would probably never be making at secondary. Like I would never, it's one of those, it just hit me flat. Like it just hit that wall. I'm like, there's a thing that I would never be making a call about that. Like you have to come and get your kid. And I started to become reflective of a couple things. Some of those kind of stark realities that are different between your context and mine, in the classrooms that we're in, despite the fact that you might be able to create a through line from some of the things that you see in behavior or some of the personalization that you do to my context. But I think the whole phone call home about a child having lice would just definitely not be a call that I would be making. And the second thing that it brought to mind is, and here's the decoded part, is how do you deal in those moments? Like, what does that look like inside the classroom? So me, like you, a parent and a teacher, we get a little bit of, there's a schism there where you sort of, any call that I make home to a family is not compartmentalized entirely by my teacher my teacher frame. I'm constantly kind of, I'm a parent too. Like I have this going on in my head. I'm a parent too. How many more ways do I have to understand this issue? And sometimes just the school lens isn't enough, because then it's way easy to come off in communications as totally systematic, just kind of cold. So I'm constantly informing or injecting any teacher communications I do to families as, how do I also represent my dad's side in that as well? And in doing that, in those sort of, so when I put it in that frame, I think about my own reactions to stuff that I hear about at my kids' school. And I think to myself, am I receiving that sort of grace from whoever's speaking to me? Are they speaking to me like they understand family? Are they speaking to me like they kind of are sharing professional information? Like, how is that being fed to me? And we've talked before, the challenges of being a parent and a teacher, right? and what that looks like. I think we landed on parent teacher interview nights. Like, how are those? And both of spouses in education too. So it ends up being when I think about someone that has zero inside knowledge of what it looks like to manage a classroom, then this would be a moment like dealing with something like lice. Possibly at the secondary level, dealing with someone that, what would be a nearest equivalent? Well, there's no equivalent, but there's things that happen inside the classroom that a parent would find out about, but the actual steps leading up to that outcome. So for instance, I had a student that brought his dog to school, walked right into class with the dog. Now, it seems completely ridiculous, but having to make the phone calls to sort of connect with admin to say I have a student here with their animal, and the dog wasn't very nice. Like the dog was actually like, it was just a little dog, but it was sort of growling and snapping at people. It was and the kid not having anywhere to put the dog because the house is locked. Basically, short story is the kid took the dog out to go to the bathroom. His family left and locked the house. So he walked to school with the dog. He doesn't have a key to his house. Doesn't have anywhere he can take the dog. He goes, well, I can just put the dog out at the no parking sign in the back parking lot, which you could see from my former classroom. So before, not the space right now, the school that I was at before, but it's in full sunlight. Like there's no tree cover, nothing. Little dog would have been like a potato chip by the end of the day. So, these interesting stories that happen inside the classroom that there isn't always a clear rule book for. You sort of just wrestle through, try and gather some collaborative things and make the parent call. Sometimes it always is resulting in you have to come and get your child, or your child may be in the office for the afternoon. They're there, they're safe, they're fine, but they're not in class. Right? They just, all these little things that are so far removed from, all right, folks, today we're doing quadratics. Let's do it. And everyone's like, yay, let's do math. The stuff that happens around that, eh? So lice was like that for me this week. It made me think about, I was appreciative for the call, despite the fact I'm like, oh, why are you calling me? Like he's had that moment too. Why are you calling me during the workday? This is like, it's not a, I guess is it a health threat? I don't know. Put him aside, put him in a room, let him scratch his head. Don't put anyone near him. Okay, no, I have to come and get him. I understand it. I appreciate the share. It makes me reflective of the other things that go on that people just, they got no clue. They got no clue about, can I say one more thing? Were you okay? I can remember, it makes me think about, there was a story, there was a parent that said to me, I don't get it. So again, this is in a previous school. I don't get it. I don't know if I was calling about attendance. I forget what I was calling about. The parent said, I don't get it. I drop my child off right at the front of the school every morning on time. And, what am I supposed to do? Go with them to class? Like to ensure that they're attending and doing their work. So I forget what I said first, but I did agree with the parent and say, yes, if you want to know exactly what your student goes through, your child goes through, yes, you need to walk with them and go to class with them, which there was just silence on the other end of the phone. But the other part that I said to them was there's 1.5 meters between the drop off, you, and the front door. I said, there's a whole lot that can happen in that 1.5 meters. So even before they make it into the school. So it's one of those interesting kind of spaces that if you drop your child off at the front of the school, but they never actually enter the school, anything can happen with a student when they go into the school. Their day then begins. But I also pointed out to the parent that there's 1.5 meters of sort of gray zone between them leaving your care and them officially entering the front door of the school. And I said, stuff can happen there too. They can just wait for you to drive away and they could walk away. They could meet some friends that change their day towards the positive. They could meet some friends that could change their day towards the negative. So there's a micro moment, a buffer moment between leaving the protective care of the household, like the other kid I talked about, taking the dog for the walk and then coming back and the house is locked, right? So I told them the two things. They weren't really happy with either one of the answers, but I think it's a truth in education that there is, it makes me think about those cartoons that I'm sure you've seen at least one where the fridge door closes and then the camera switches to the inside and all the fruits and vegetables are dancing like, woo, yeah, now that no one's paying attention, we can do this thing. It's a little bit like that perception, I think, when your child leaves the home to go to school and they become a student somewhere along the path, or they remain a non-student and still go to class that day. That could be kind of bad too. But the fact is that there's a transition there that happens away from you. And that's what it got me thinking about this week. Well, I won't say the other thing too, but what are you thinking? Does that bring anything to mind for you?
It made me think about dropping my kids off at school every morning. Mm-hmm. And watching them walk away from the car and having no idea what happens next. One time recently, we got into an argument in the car and I took something away from my oldest son. He was in the back and I'm like, give me that now. I took it and I kind of tossed it on the front seat. Got to school. They get out, they pop the trunk, they grab their stuff, they close the trunk, they go. And I sat there. Normally I look in the rearview mirror, I make sure they're on school property, I hit the gas, I go to work. This time was different. I didn't feel good about just leaving. So I grab the thing beside me, I get out of the car. Now I'm in like no man's land, right? I'm in a completely different perspective. I'm now out of the car, standing where they stand, walking, like my car's just sitting there and I'm walking away from the car and into the yard. And then I get this view, this perspective of what it looks like for them. My older son is walking like off to a corner of the yard where his buddies are. And my youngest one's going towards the park play area. And I holler at my youngest one. I'm like, get your brother. So he kind of runs over and says, come back, Dad wants to see you. And I'm completely floored because I'm now like, I feel like I'm in a different world. This is what they do when I leave them. This is what it looks like. This is what it smells like. This is what it looks like for me to look back and see the car. That's what they see, right? Like all these different perspectives were just colliding. Mm-hmm. And the fact that, I was a little bit still upset with my son. He was upset with me. So he comes over and he wouldn't come right up to me. He's like, what's up? And I tossed the thing to him. I said, here, you're going to need this today. And I said, like, have a good day. I'll see you at home after school. And he's like, okay, Dad. And it seemed at that moment, even though we were like worlds apart, it seemed okay. So he went, my youngest one went, and I went. And it was just like, I just felt like a shock. Like it was just weird to the system. So that's when you were explaining like what it's like for a student to be released and go. And this is how the kid lives when nobody's watching. I kind of, it reminded me of that recent experience and how it's just, I don't know why it's so mind-boggling to me. Like right now we're in the middle of figuring out like next year, we're not going to do after school care anymore. The kids are walking home. But we really feel like we need to start preparing them for that now. So like literally today, I'm supposed to go and get keys cut for the guys because we're going to start training them on where to walk, how to walk home, which door to come in, what to do if there's an emergency. Like we are literally like, you know how our talk, you and I, months ago about the preparation for the emergency in the morning and what's going to happen if an emergency hits. That's what my wife and I are doing to the boys right now. This is what happens if you get home and the garage door won't open. This is what you do if you get home, you realize you lost your key. Like, because inevitably it's not going to go smooth, right? Like it's just not, because I know my boys, we're going to prepare them. You know, my wife even said, which I thought was ridiculous. She's like, we're going to have to get the young one an iPod Touch. Why? So that when he approaches the house and he has Wi-Fi access, he can communicate with us. He can text us and let us know he's home. Why? Like, I'm just like, it's not the end of the world. If they get home, we can have a safety plan in place if they can't get in. And we're both planning on figuring out the logistics of who's going to be home within 45 minutes of them arriving. Like, we're going to make sure everything is as set as it can be. But, you know, she's thinking like a general, right? And I'm thinking like a corporal. Oh, it'll be fine. Two little grunts. They'll just sit on the deck in the backyard where nobody can do anything to them. And they'll just patiently wait until one of us gets home. So it's kind of neat that you've got me coming full circle around to this, because this is what I'm going to be dealing with in the next couple of weeks. And I'll go ahead and say it. I'm moving schools. So, which is kind of cool, because I realized this new school I'm going to is actually closer to my house than the school I actually work at that I thought was close to my house. So it's all about perspective, right? It's all about actually paying attention to the details. Long story short, the new school I'm going to has different bell times than the school I'm at, than my kid's school, than my wife's school. So I'll be starting later in the morning, which is awesome because I can make sure they get to school okay. So I can either drop them off if it's raining or if it's really cold or whatever. My wife insists that they should walk. So at a certain time every morning, I should send them on their way. And I'm thinking, okay, well, there's another danger, because then I could get in the car and I could go to work, and then half an hour later, I'm getting a call saying, we found your kid on the street or whatever. You need to come get him. And it's like, what? Whereas if I just drop them off, they get out of the car. I know they're on the yard. I'm good to go. Anyway, so it's kind of stressing out my wife right now, because drop off is taken care of. But then after school, my bell time is my end time is much later than everybody else. So now the heat's on my wife to get home at a particular time to make sure everything's okay. And so we're in the middle of like, okay, let's just do one thing at a time. Let's get the kids practicing walking to school every couple of days and then walking home every couple of days. Let's just do that. And let's do it now, because I can get home faster than my wife. So it's all good. And we're shutting down the school year. I know in episode, I've got it here on my notes, episode 33, we talked about prepping for the end of the school year. Well, come on. I know there's still a month, but we're getting into shutdown mode. So it's not like I need to be at school for an hour and a half after anymore. We're beyond that now. So let's do all this stuff now. Let's figure it out. Let's get them experimenting with the keys and the alarm and all the things that are going to come with them walking home. And that whole process is not blowing my mind as much as what I told you I experienced when I got out of the car and walked 8 meters away from it to look into the yard. That was much more, what's the word I'm looking for? Traumatic to me than me thinking that they're going to walk home after school and get in the house. It's all about perspective, I guess. It's how you see it and where you're standing when you're looking at it. Because now that I know that I'm leaving my school, I see things differently at school. Like when I was in the hallway yesterday and the bell rang for the kids to come in, I found myself staring down one hallway and then turning and staring down another. And I was seeing the place like I'd never seen it before. Isn't that weird?
No, I don't think it's weird at all. Okay, so bunch of things you got me thinking, my spouse and I, we're in a very similar types of conversations. We're a couple steps earlier there when you are right now with planning for your kids to have a key, and to be able to walk. Both my kids are in pre and after care as well. We have had the conversation, what does that transition look like when they're no longer in care? And it's the thing that hangs us up is there a package deal? So it's funny, we sort of get, I think, a little bit more comfortable with one child doing the whole walk and the unlocking thing, but being a little bit more wondering, how's it going to work for the other kid? Now, the age is the one part, but it's also the attitude that you're sort of measuring through. Like, one kind of gets it, get home, unlock the door kind of deal. What's funny though, is that they're both kind of necessary, because I know that if everything goes smooth, the one child is like the trooper. It'll work out great. But if it starts to go left or right, she's going to need my son with the creative thinking. But he's the X factor as far as whether or not he'll kind of comply with, looking both ways at the crossroads. So together they have both halves of the brain that would be necessary, I think, to troubleshoot some of the stuff that you're talking about, right? The thing that, talking about getting out of the car and getting into your kid's space, drop off for us is getting them into pre-care in the morning. So we've been walking them right into the school, into pre-care the whole time. So there is no, we park the car, we walk in together, we talk on the way in, we're sort of talking about the day. We have our little huddle up before they go in, the affirmations, and then walk them into care. You sign off on the sign in thing, and then I head off to work. So that's been our reality. We haven't had the drop off at the front door, go ahead, start your day kind of thing. So that'll be a big transition. And what we were talking about is whether or not we could do life with just pre-care, whether or not that could work, and then they could start walking home at the end of the day on their own. So we're in that similar space, and that similar, we're probably mixed in much the same way you are, as, one of us kind of saying, they can do it. It could just, and then the other one kind of going, yeah, but what if this thing happens? And you can put a whole list of what if this thing happens, in the same way you can go completely blind and say nothing's going to happen. So that space in between where she's saying, sure, get the iPod Touch or something, like, so they can communicate. That's very similar to what friends of ours did. They have 3 kids, and they all sort of, initially they would be walking to and from together, but now you're starting to see they're finding other kids that are also walking home in the same direction. So I'd be coming home and I would see like one of them walking with a friend, and then the 2 other siblings walking together. So they're starting to find their kind of path. So I'm going to stay tuned to your process, because it sounds like the same thing. I'd be thinking they can just sit on the deck, I guess, except in wintertime. They can do the alarm properly unless they don't hit the buttons right. Right? There's a lot of that. How's that all going to work out? Do we just, don't give them the iPod, but give them a remote for the garage? So worst case scenario, they can just sit in the garage, in the driveway, like a garage party until we get home. I don't know. I love your perspective comment though, about sort of seeing things. It's funny. So I'm in a similar space. So, I'm switching to a new program next year. I'm leaving. I'm going to a different school like you are. Moving, and it's a very different program than what I'm in right now. Plus, it's a new space that I've never inhabited. I have the qualifications to be there, but this is my first time. I'll be working in an ASD program. So I can also appreciate I don't know what it is, that I don't know why things look different. We talked about percentages on the on-ramp as far as where your energies are. And I totally agree. I totally agree with your percentages, the 60, 20, 20. I can think I completely, and even because when you're just lifted, here's what it does to me. Here's what becomes remarkable. So both of us, transformational change for next year. I'll say that. Okay. New school, new culture, new challenges. That's big. And I've had other people say, I don't know how you can sort of do that. Like why wouldn't you just get something different within your immediate? Why do you need to leave? And that's a big question. Like, what is it in me that sort of sparks me up, and it actually makes me not satisfied with the small change? And I've given that a lot of thought. And at some point in my life, I would have said, I have commitment issues. Like I would have landed there saying that or some sort of adult ADHD, like I get distracted and I find I have a hard time reeling myself back in. So just constant interest in the universal that is EDU. And I kind of go with it. It's the next sparkly thing. I think it's despite the fact that leads to some sort of adult diagnosis in some ways. If I try and flip that to a superpower, I think there's a certain element of my perception of what growth is. And my perception of growth isn't just going laterally to take up space. It also means pulling vertically. Like I need to sort of like reach to that next thing in order to feel like I'm learning something new. I said to my colleague, actually just yesterday, so she's been CYW, CYC, I'm not sure, whatever the acronym. She's a child and youth. She's a counselor, worker, social worker, okay? I said to her, I really do believe that you only understand your growth when you apply it to a new context. It's really hard. It's the goldfish. It's the goldfish growth thing, is that there are some goldfish that will just keep growing into regular size fish if you give them, whoa, flappy hands. For those of you not watching the video, I just knocked over my microphone almost. But yeah, I know. Yeah, it's quiet hands, Clef, quiet hands. There are some of the goldfish that will just keep growing. Like you put them in a river, they're going to get bigger and bigger. They're going to expand to fill their space. And the idea of staying in one space to sort of just fill it isn't a very comfortable place for me. I need to then sort of move the boundaries out a little bit and see what else can I learn in a new context. I think that's what happened I know that's what happened in my previous position in Alta Ed. I got to a place, I did it for 6 years, and I got to a place where I recognized that the actual space that I needed to generate a new thing to keep me deeply interested in my work, there was no wiggle room left. And for somebody else, so me pushing the borders out created a wider space for somebody else coming in that would be starting something new. So they would have space to expand and then push the lines out a little bit more for themselves. The program that I'm in right now, I feel like that's very much a truth. I've managed to kind of fill the space and my headspace within 2 years. And now I'm seeing that where I'm bumping up against the edges of the program, somebody else needs to come in and kind of inflate it from the center again. So I need to move to a different program that the walls are slightly wider, where I'm a little bit smaller in my experience and my connections and my understanding, so that I can feel like I'm growing again. This isn't me changing my size. It's the space within which I'm growing that changes. And I think that's also something that always interested me with the social media use that I had, is that I was pursuing something that I had very little understanding of. It was something out there on the edge. I was like, that fascinates me because it is so different than my context. So you looking down the hallway, I've done very similar things. It's not just looking down the hallway. It's even how I'm interacting with the students. It's a weird bit of clarity, like just how I see what I'm doing. The 20% that's given me I haven't moved context yet, but I have a mindset that's allowing me to see my current context from a little bit of a distance. It doesn't say to me, and we talked about this on the on-ramp, oh, but okay, if you can get that clarity, why not stay? Like, have you not just in effect created? And I don't think that's a truth. I think that's the mirage in there. I think what it's done is you've decluttered your brain a little bit. You've created a little bit of thinking space. And sure, you're seeing your current context, some new elements of it. But I think fundamentally, the drive to change would still propel you out of there. Like, I think that's the major driver there. And I know for me, I sent you this text one time. I've come to accept the fact that I'm the guy that wants more experiences. I want deep experience, but I want a lot of experiences in EDU. Just the thought that I could check out another program in another 2 to 3 years excites me about remaining a teacher. And I've had people say, no, that's not me. I'm excited by, excited. It might be the wrong activating word. I enjoy education because of the stability, and I can keep doing the same thing. I just have accepted, for me, that's not the case. I like being surprised by my context. I love that moment. I love your moment when you say looking back. I love that moment of looking back at the car. Looking back at the car. That's actually a perfect analogy of getting outside of your comfort zone. Dude, getting out of your car, stepping into a space that you don't feel like you should be, yet you bring your role with you. What are you in that point? Are you a teacher? Are you an educator? Are you a dad? Are you just Rolland? Are you sort of like, what are you tapping into in that in order to make that moment work? And I love it. I think that's a really great metaphor. I think so many parents would discover, I'm going to say a gift, a wonderful sort of like bit of information if in their routine and dropping off their children in the morning, instead they parked the car and walked with them to the front door. I've just observed, and I mean, at high school, I observe it far more than at elementary. The sort of like car rolls up, kids get out, just walk away from the vehicle, car drives away. It looks like a chauffeur service. And I just wonder, I was like, look at the parents had the window open. They didn't even say like, I love you, Dad. Like, there was no talk. It's just like drive, dump. So I love your moment. I love your moment. You've got me sort of thinking some, you got me having some deep feels over that moment that you put you through. And it takes some discomfort. You have to get comfortable with the discomfort. I think you also have to sort of pay attention to the moment. Make a quick decision. Don't take a long time to take that decision. Because I'm sure your drive away from the school, from the point where you wouldn't necessarily see your kids anymore, which was the tether, seeing the kids in the rear view and making a quick decision to get out of the car and go have a follow-up conversation. Very quick decision. And then, of course, you pay the price for the quick decision. Oh, geez, this is kind of uncomfortable. Oh, I'm really far from the car right now. Oh, I'm in the playground. All right. Like, what tools do you use? You got me rattled, but I love that analogy.
Yeah, I'm glad I could contribute a couple of things. When you were asking your questions, I was totally a parent at that moment. When I got out of the car and I walked up the little path and I entered past the fence area, I was in the yard. And it's funny because I tend to think of the rules. My wife knows how there are something about rules that I follow them. But I don't always want them to apply to me, but I still follow them most of the time. And I was only like a meter or two into the yard, and I know that I'm supposed to drop my kids off and leave the yard. That's the policy at my son's school. It's the policy at my school. So I was like, oh, I'm on the yard and I'm not supposed to be. But like it had to be done. It's not like I was there. I was hovering over them for the whole 15 minutes that they're waiting outside and their teacher's on duty. It wasn't like that. It was just a moment where I felt like, okay, I need to see my kid. Things are not good here. I need to deal with this effectively, or I need to do something to show him that it was in a way I was apologizing to him without saying I'm sorry, which is a weakness of mine. So that was me with the olive branch, and he knew it. But man, I was like, yeah, like the part of it that just gets me is just standing in the yard and just looking back and seeing the car and being like, oh my God, because I'm the guy, I tell them I love them, have a good day as they're getting out. So, and then sometimes I'll roll down the window and I'll say, hey, leave your brother alone, get your hands off your brother or whatever, right? So I'm that dad, but everybody who's there at that time, we all kind of know each other. We all have our routine. Some parents get out, pop the trunk, give the kids their bag. Me, I'm like, okay, have a great day. Love you guys. See you later. They get out, they pop the back, they grab their stuff. The older one grabs the latch, shuts it, and they go, and I go. And that's on a good day. But this wasn't a good day. So I'm glad that it could give you something to like really work with there, because I was thinking, wow, Clough has really taken this to heart. And then I love you used the word mirage. I haven't heard that word in a long time, so I wrote it down. I really like that. And we're both going to be at a new school next year, a whole new experience.
I'm looking forward to season 2, bro.
That's what I wrote down here.
This is like season 2
of the podcast, because what a better way to kick off a new season than to see me completely stressed out of my mind.
You and me, man. Yeah, it's gonna be awesome. Like isn't it funny? Look, we're laughing over the
stress that's to come,
because there's someone that's listening that's like, these guys are like, what are they in it for, the pain? But I'll put it back to the I think we're still on tap with the intent of this, which is a little bit about folding the inside out. So I do believe in every episode every week that we've talked, I think we've managed to bring, it's not just about the presentation of the week, which could just come off like a laundry list of what it means to be a teacher, probably a dad. It's also by bringing it out, what is my reaction here? Like I reacted the first time when I went through this moment, but me now saying aloud what I went through in my week with my family, the kids, a colleague. I think there's value there. I love that 35 weeks in that we're still tapping into the spirit of that. And also it really speaks to the fact that being a teacher, being an educator, and being a family member, and being a parent, and being a father, being a man in education, I think we're bringing some really true color to that. Like I really dig it. And the fact that we're not speaking from the same context, but meeting somewhere in the middle, I think it draws in. There's no vinegar there. It's all honey. Like, I think people are just like, that's cool. Yeah.
Well, I mean, the really cool thing for me at a selfish level is that we're both recording this. We're both capturing this. So for example, when we started this podcast, season 1, if you want to call it that, it was about the start of the school year, how we were doing, what we were doing to get it started. When we start up season 2, it's going to be, holy cow, this is what Clough is doing to start up at the secondary. This is what Chidiac's doing to start up at elementary. And when I say stress, I mean it. Because, like, for example, for me, I literally have to pack up everything in the classroom I'm in now, bring it home. And then at some point in August, I have to drive it all to my new school and unpack it. And then there's the whole, like, if you really want to decode it, the room I'm going into, it might still be occupied by the teacher that's already in there.
Yeah.
So I got to wait for them to move their stuff. I got to move my stuff in, or I just move my stuff in and help that person. Like, I don't know how that's going to look. And it's not going to be like a fun time. I mean, I already feel a sense of stress setting up my classroom every year at the start of the year. That's not something that's ever gone easier. Even when I have lists of stuff to do and what order to do it in, it weighs heavy on me. But having said all that, I'm excited about the change. I'm looking forward to starting a new adventure, starting a new journey with people I don't really know. I'm looking forward to that. Like you, I think, having spoken to you and heard your perspective about going deep in education and looking for experiences, I think I've always suppressed that. I think I've always used different reasons to move. But at this point in my career, I think the only reason that counts is what you're interested in and that you want to change.
Sorry, I got to jump on that. And isn't that the antithesis I find in some ways. I can exist in both conversations. The stability of the long game and the coolness of a new initiative or a new thing, a new shiny thing. I can play in both. However, I don't know. I haven't come across too many people that really, as you say, embrace that idea of not only that change comes at you, but that you can dance with it. You can dance with it. You can create it for yourself. I love that you're mentioning that it's sort of in you and you're ready or sort of now considering embracing it. I don't know if there's not a lot of conversations that happen in that space. I really haven't come across anybody that's sort of openly saying I would prefer to sort of be at a different school. Now this is the extreme. Let's say a different school, a different context every couple of years. Like that those conversations I just don't come across too often. It tends to be more the change happened and I dealt with it, as opposed to no. I am looking forward. I'm looking forward to this next change, and I'm also looking forward to the next 1, 2, or 3 years down the road when I know that there's another thing I want to work on. You know, that sort of fanning out nature. I love that you said that. Ready, sort of that you embracing it, that you think that it was in you, but you're ready to kind of like take a good look at it. That's cool, man.
Well, as time is going on, those layers of insecurity, those layers of what are people going to think are starting to be torn away. I'll give you an example. In this round of moving, I really looked deep within myself about, okay, why do I want to move? Why do I need change? What is it about it? Do I need the change? Like, do I really need to change? And there were lots of, I think, good conversations with my wife, because at the end of the day, I think that's the only conversation outside of myself that matters. It doesn't matter what everybody else says or thinks, right? Like my colleagues, they all have their opinion about me leaving. That's good. Everybody has an opinion about something, so that's good. But I'm not taking any of that into consideration and giving it any weight, because it doesn't mean anything in the end. It doesn't matter what Joe thinks, because Joe's not the one that has to live my life. I do. So in the conversations I've been having with my wife about moving and potential moves and applying to different places, you know, there was some things to consider, like bell times and all those little things that people might not consider. When you have kids and you have a partner and life is happening, those are the things you have to consider, I would say. So in considering those things, you know, there was a part of me that was like, oh, geez, you know, you're doing it again. Like, because when I arrived at this school that I'm at now, many of the people around me, you know, and this is how shallow some perspectives can be, because they're not within you, they're outside of you. You know, people are like, well, this is perfect. You can retire from that school. And I remember thinking, why? Why would you say I can retire from this school? Oh, because it's really close to home. Oh, I've never had that philosophy. My philosophy has always been, I'd be willing to drive 30 minutes to go to work if it meant that I was going to be happy at work, and it meant that I was going to have a certain type of leadership that I crave at work. And then I moved to this school, and don't get me wrong, the leadership hasn't been horrible, but I've just not really, I mean, yeah, it's close to home. That's convenient, and I've done some great learning over the past 3 years, but there's like, I'm not feeling a spark, and it's only been 3 years. So, you know, there's a crew of people that'll say, oh, you've only been there for 3 years. That doesn't matter to me anymore. It doesn't matter anymore. I'm going to a new experience. I don't know how long I'll be at my next school. Maybe I might not like it. But at the moment, I'm excited. I'm looking forward to going and doing the work that I'm planning on doing there. And it's awesome. It's awesome to be free, to have removed the layers that surround you, that involve the people that say, oh, you're going to that school? You're leaving this one, you're going to that one? Why? You're crazy. Or, oh my God, your bell time's so much later there. Like, you're nuts for doing that. Like, at this point in the game, I'm actually amused by these comments. And I'm also aware and open to the fact that everybody's going to have their opinion. I am not to take them personally because I don't know the context and the perspective from which they're coming from. I don't know, which reinforces the fact and the idea that I need to stay true to who I am. And maybe in some moments, I don't like who I am. And so it makes it difficult for me to come to grips with that. But in other moments, there's a relief. There's a sense of relief that it doesn't matter what this person says and what that person says. The only real conversation that was truly important was the one that I had with my wife about, is this going to work? What do you think of this? Right? And she was very supportive. You know, I remember a key moment was after my interview, which was really awesome too, because let me give you this little tidbit. So they call you for an interview, okay? And then they already have their times laid out. So if you say, oh, I'm not available Thursday after school, well, I guess you're out of luck, because they're probably going to interview a bunch of people. They're not going to start mixing and matching. So you already know, okay, I'm out of this. I'm not in the running anymore. So I get the phone call, and the principal says, I want to interview you tomorrow. What's good for you? Before school, after school, planning time, lunch? Already, I'm like, this is great. Like, wide open, outside the box. Because he says, well, we could do it after school traditionally, but I'll be working till 8 p.m. and you're going to have to get to this school and that school and do this and that. He said, and then I said, okay, well, we can do it in the morning because I got to drop my kids off at school. Now, the convenient thing is I'm being interviewed for a position by the principal that is currently principal at my kid's school. So he knows my kids, he knows me, he knows my wife. There's already a familiarity there of who I am and who he is. So I said to him, is it cool with you if I get there at this time? The kids can sit right outside the office, and then when it's time for when supervision starts, they can just go outside and be supervised. He's like, yeah, man, let's do it. So I'm thinking already the interview processes can be also, we should unpack that sometime. It can be a nerve-wracking experience because you don't know if it's going to be a conversation or if it's going to be a hardcore, here are 10 questions, let's do it. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. You don't know. So already I'm getting a good vibe, like, okay, so this person's taking into account that I'm a parent who's responsible for drop-off. My wife's not home, so I can't converse with her. Oh, when can I go for an interview? I have to make a decision. And already I'm being supported with my decision. So I'm feeling good. So get to school for my interview, and he comes out with this is messed up. The new principal of my kid's school is right now the principal of the school that my kid's principal's going to. So they're doing like a switch. She's coming to our school. He's going to her school. So she's in on the interview too, because he's the incoming principal. She's the outgoing principal. So they're both doing the interview, but we're at the school where my kids go. So I get there, I sit my kids down. I'm like, okay, take out your books and find something to do for the next 15 minutes because you cannot be disturbing the staff here. And we've got special permission for you to sit right here and chill. Out come the two principals. They say hello to me. Boom, right to the kids. What's going on, boys? How's it going? Sorry to get you here early. Now, they don't know this, but I'm totally in awe. I'm in awe of the outgoing principal because I think I mentioned this before. He treats my kids really well. He treats all the kids well from what I can see, and that's important to me. And the new principal is all over them. And I'm like, wicked. So as I'm like dying because I'm about to go and do an interview and I don't know how it's going to be, I'm also really happy and starting my day off great because my kids are doing a good job. They're with me. The administrators are like talking to them and engaging them, building relationship. Then I go in for my interview. I'm going to save that for another podcast. But basically to say that it's hard. It's been hard for me to open up, to take the layers off, to see who I really am, because I think for a long time I've not done that. And so I'm in the middle of a lot going on right now. It's funny, people tell you it's a midlife crisis. I don't see it as that. I just see it as my natural progression, and this is where I am on my journey in life, and this is what I'm experiencing right now. And so I got to go with that flow. But it's funny because some people do know that I'm moving, and the reactions are interesting. The reactions have been, "Oh, you're going to that school?" Like there's already a preconceived notion of what that culture is like there, what that school community is like. And I'm like, yeah, I'm going to that school, right? Like I've been embracing it. Oh, some people have just been like, that's amazing, dude. We're going to miss you. Um, Kick butt, go and kick butt like you did here. But at the end of the day, good or bad, it's me. I had to make the decision. I have to live with the decision. I didn't take it lightly. I never do, because it impacts more than just me. It impacts my family. It impacts my career, you know? And so I think I'm like you. I've just never been able to say it. I've never been able to say I want more experiences, because when I have found in the circle I run in that when I talk about moving, when I talk about change, the people around me don't necessarily see that as a positive. They see it as a negative. Like they are more they're more in the camp of, no, you get to a place and you stay there for 10 or 15 years. And I'm like, no, I can't do that. I don't want to do that. I like that about my work and the board I work in. I like that I've now made a 2-year commitment, and I'm allowed to apply to postings after 2 years, unless there's some kind of extraneous circumstances, and then I can get supervisory officer permission. But all that aside, I made a 2-year commitment. So the longest I've ever been at a school has been 6 years, and the shortest I've ever been at a school was less than 1 year, and there was some extenuating circumstances there. But aside from that, it was 2 years. So I've never really been anywhere. And I remember saying to my administrator, my current administrator, I hope that if I get interviews, that people don't look at my resume and see the short stints as a negative, because I don't see it as a negative. I see it as a positive. I see it as, I went into a community, I did my work in that community, and then I left. And there's different reasons for leaving. I'm just blessed that I have the option to leave, because when I think of the alternative, when I think of some people going to an office every day for like 10 plus years, I think for that person to change, they might have to get a whole new job. And I don't have that. I don't have to worry about that. I can be a teacher and I can work in different facilities. And I find that very attractive, right? So I don't always have to move up the ladder. I can get off one ladder and get onto another one. And I kind of like that. So thank you, Chris, for getting me like thinking about this and getting me really engaged in it, because I'm coming to the realization, and I'm starting to be able to verbalize it and hear it coming out of me, that I am a certain way, and I should really be okay with that, because that's who I am. It's not really hurting anybody. So I see it as just part of my like everyday living. It's my process, I guess, my development.
Yeah, I would say, and I think to talk about it, I like to say it, but to hear it, you don't know, if you like, what you're doing until I think you go through that process. You have to sort of put it out and hear it come back to you a little bit, get it outside your head, get comfortable with saying it. And the fact is, getting comfortable with saying doesn't necessarily mean that it's still going to lead to positive change. I've never promised myself that. I have not once promised myself that. What I have, if I were to go by my own personal history, is that my personal or professional history is that my brain is pulling in opportunity that may or may not result in change. But just being aware of that means that it sort of plants some seeds. And when it pops up, you actually notice, here's an opportunity, and you don't look, you see it for what it is. I've never promised myself that any of the changes that I've made in my education, that it would be better. But I've always deeply felt that it's interesting and it's what I want to do. Right. And without, you get more information, you learn, you grow. And I know if I look back, I've always typically been like when I stayed at the last school, I was there for, well, from 2002, I was there for 11 years. That was my first educational stop when I flipped careers. Um, my restaurant work before was kind of like 3 to 5 years. Like and I always felt like I was still building. I never lost my base. I never lost my momentum, but I was always prepared to kind of move on. I was ready to sort of go to that next challenge. So I realized I got to bust out soon, man. I'm looking at the time. We got art class this morning.
Well, then let's shut it down.
All right, man.
It's been a great conversation as usual. Episode 35 is in the books, I guess.
Yeah, I love it.
Can you believe that? And I'm looking forward to season 2.
Yeah, yeah. There we go. We're already plotting out that next change, eh? That next change. I'll definitely want to send. I want to see some pics of your new context. I don't know if I think I need to see like some sort of updated pic of your current classroom, maybe even your school. Send me some if you get a chance, just so I can actually, I've heard a lot about, but I don't think I really understand. I think I've seen the front foyer and kind of like where the office is. If you could send me just so I can kind of, because I'm never going to see it again. That's what I'm starting to realize. I'm never going to see it again. And it's not like I've seen the whole thing now. But if you get a chance, send me some pics. I'll send you some pics of what my context looks like too. Like sort of like the school in relation to the school beside it.
Yeah, let's make a deal that we'll take some outside pictures of the facility.
Yeah.
And then some pictures of our actual workspace. I'd love to do that. I think that's cool.
Yeah, we'll share it up because like I said, we're going to be in brand new. And I think that'll be not that I need closure on your space, but it'll give me, that's the last little bit that when you talk about moving through your world, I don't have the video to sort of harmonize with the story. So I want to have an accurate picture of what that might be. So I appreciate it if you could.
Right on. Thanks, buddy. Have a great week.
You too, man. And I will reply on text. I'm hopefully we're out of the infestation mode. So
it's all good. It's all good.
All right.
See ya.
Take care.